Well, last week I talked a bit about Dublin and the way people talk down there, and at least some of you seem to enjoy that. I like to vary things as much as possible, not be too predictable. I've been thinking for some time of telling you a wee bit more about my boat, Warrior Maid, the name being a translation of Kelly, my eldest daughter's name. Warrior Maid began life as a ship's lifeboat maybe 60 years or more ago. She was built in Birkenhead, near Liverpool, and when the ship was decommissioned, the lifeboats were sold off. These were 28-foot clinker-built wooden boats, built to carry 53 passengers in an emergency. Clinker-built means the planks overlap. One of these was bought by a man called Ewan McCulloch, same surname as myself, who lived up in Carnlough, a wee harbour halfway up the County Antrim coast. This man obviously knew what he was doing, for he made a great job of converting her into a sailing motor cruiser. When my wife Cherry and I first bought this boat, people naturally asked me what sort of a boat it was, to which I usually replied, a rotten one. The boat had been sitting up on the hard at a wee private marina in Donaghadee for several years, and the rainwater hadn't been too kind to it. All the plywood decks were completely rotten, as were the sides. The roof leaked, and the cockpit sole, the floor, was pretty dodgy too. In fact, the second time I climbed aboard and stepped down into the wheelhouse, my foot went straight through the floor and I skinned the whole shin of the leg. Needless to say, we didn't pay out a fortune for this ship, but we spent a fair bit over the next 3 or 4 years on fixing it up. I spent 3.5 years replacing 6 planks in the hull, repairing rotten ribs, making new decks and fiberglass in them, new cockpit floor, repairing the cabin roof, new wheelhouse roof and supports, new rudder. Happily, another boat owner, Alan, was engaged in a similar project to myself, and we both encouraged and commiserated with each other, especially as we watched other boat owners sailing out of the marina. One of these days, we told ourselves. Finally, in November 2001, I booked the crane to lift me in. Unfortunately, I had to officiate at the funeral of a suicide earlier that day, so the whole event was over before I was really able to take it in. We were in the water and drinking a glass or two of sparkling wine to mark the occasion before it really sank in. That following summer, we travelled around 300 nautical miles, up and down the coast of Northern Ireland and as far as Carlingford in County Louth, which is just across the border. The second year we ventured a bit further afield, sailing up the Clyde Estuary in Scotland, around the Kiles of Butte and across to Tarbert and Campbellton in the Mull of Kintyre. On the first leg of that journey, we ended up towing the other boat into the harbour in Port Patrick, even though they were about an hour ahead of us originally. The seasoned sailors had managed to get a sheet of polythene wrapped around their prop, which completely stalled their engine. Later in the trip though, the favour was returned, and we had to get the resident engineer aboard on the way down the Kilbrannan Sound towards Campbellton. We'd broken the welding on a frame supporting a flexible coupling on our prop shaft, and the vibration was trying to tear the hull apart. By the way, I managed to find an engineering firm in Campbelltown to do a temporary welding and drilling job on that frame, and the owner, who'd picked me up and dropped me back to the boat, refused to take any money from me there and then. He said he'd send me a bill, and only charged me £30 anyway. So all those stories about Scotsmen being so stingy about money might not be totally accurate. We also travelled down the Irish coast as far as Howth, just outside Dublin. Altogether, we did another 700 nautical miles that season. Unfortunately, on the way back up from Dublin, we managed to blow up the engine, which has limited our sailing for the last few seasons. As any of you who happen to own one will know, a wooden boat is a big hole in the sea that you keep pouring money into.